Well, welcome again to another John's Media World Extra. We've got a lot of different stories to combine today, kind of cleaning up and getting to the newer stories that we'll be talking about over the weekend with their families as we gather for Easter. I'm sure we'll be talking about that. But I have Ron Johnson, Dumb Ron Johnson, as our first story. I call him Dumb Ron Johnson because he has been dumb since he began as a senator. And he continues, and he is saying something truly stupid this time. Forget the Constitution. We really should be looking at what he calls the big picture. So here's Ron Johnson making his case for us. And by the way, before we get to that, Ron Johnson is also going to essentially say that if they don't get rid of the filibuster, then we will not exist as a nation anymore. The Democrats are determined to destroy this country because that really helps our children and certainly helps us maintain our homes and house payments and car payments and, the good life. We don't like any of that stuff. We want to destroy it all. Now, let me just start off with a quote from Ron Johnson. This is a quote now. Republicans will look like complete schmucks when Democrats nuke the filibuster and turn America into a one-party nation. Well, right now we have a one-party nation. We have representatives, Republicans, who aren't representing all of their district, only the Republican side of the district, the MAGA side of the district. So they're really not representing their district very well. They only represent one side of it. So just keep that in mind. Let's get to Ron Johnson and what he had to say about the filibuster and the justices who really should take a look at the big picture and forget about the Constitution.
To make sure that we can, again, save this country, secure our elections, secure our border. I was disappointed the Supreme Court, the justices there. I mean, this is using the Constitution. It's not a suicide pact. And unfortunately, the justices, maybe their ruling will be on the law and on the Constitution, but you have to look at the bigger picture here. What is happening with China, with the tourism, birthright citizenship tourism? This is going to destroy this country. Creating all these millions of voters that will obviously not be voting in the best interest of America. So we have to understand exactly what the left is doing, what communist China is doing, and we need to act now to prevent that.
Yes, we have to understand what the left is doing because they're doing it just like China is, and it'll be the end of our country. Now, I thought this part of the comment was interesting. Maybe their ruling will be on the law and the Constitution, but really they should take a look at the big picture, and that's the big picture right there. He's addressed the big picture. The liberals, the left should not be in charge. All right, this is Ron Johnson making incredible statements again. He also said that, we must face reality and act now. End it first to save America, the filibuster, by securing our elections and ending birthright tourism in the Supreme Court case. Okay, so that Supreme Court case did not look good for Trump or anybody who has been arguing that birthright citizenship is wrong and it has been misinterpreted for many, many decades or centuries. So this is all crazy stuff, and it keeps them busy. All right. Now let's get to another individual from Wisconsin. This is Derek Van Orden. You might remember Derek Van Orden as the guy who started teaching other representatives in Congress how to change a tire. And when they jacked up the car started tipping because the jack was not very stable. One of the things you've got to keep in mind when you're jacking a car up, make it stable. And it started tipping, and you can figure out the rest. Not a great teacher. But again, we're going to hear from Derek Van Orden. This is another mindless message from Derek, claiming he's representing his district. Here we go again. His district in Wisconsin, when in fact, I looked this up, 412,000 voters turned out. Out of that 412, 200,000 voters voted for Democrat Rebecca Cook. So that's like half wanted a Democrat. Now, he is insisting he's representing his district. Look, you may win by just a smidge, but you should really try to represent everybody in the district and moderate your decision process. Well, anyway, he's not going to do that. He's never going to do that. I don't know why I even brought it up. It sounds like Derek Van Orden is okay ignoring half of the will of the people in this particular cut. So let's check out Derek Van Orden.
Everybody, it's Congressman Derek Van Orden. I'm sitting in my office, and it's about 17:15. That's 5:15 for your civilian times. Spent most of the day reading the 92-page bill that the Senate sent over that passed it by unanimous consent. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, there was a total of 5 United States senators on the floor when they did this. And I'm telling you right now, it's a dumpster fire. This is predominantly why. What they're doing is it says Department of Homeland Security Act of 2026 table shall be 0. That means that ICE and the Border Patrol wouldn't get any money. They'd zero them out. They'd essentially defund them. And we're not going to do that. We're not going to open the border back again. And I don't know why in the hell the Senate sent this over. I don't work for them. I don't work for Chuck Schumer. I don't work for John Thune. I don't work even for the Speaker of the House. I work for the 3rd Congressional District of the state of Wisconsin. So what the Republicans in the House now are going to do is we're going to put forward a continuing resolution to make sure that all of our hard-working federal officers don't have to worry about making rent. Make them pay our federal workers, and also do not allow them to open the border again, because that's just junk and Americans don't want that. So Americans don't want opening the border again. I got that message. But at the same time, remember the big bad bill did fund ICE, DHS. It funded it. This is extra money. This is a lot of extra money going toward masked hoodlums that go around the country intimidating people, killing American citizens, and taking them and hiding them away for maybe a week or two, then releasing them. These are American citizens that they scoop up and release at some other time. This is the kind of country they like to live in. This is the authoritarianism in each and every one of these representatives. Derek Van Orden is one of those people. Now, this was posted, and I took a look at some of the responses on this. And if you remember anything that he said here, which, kind of in one ear, out the other, because it's really unimportant. But anyway, this person wrote, "It takes a lot of guts to wear a sky blue suit." And let's take a look at that again. There it is. It takes a lot of guts. It's from Jay Rath. The other person said, "No, you're working for a pedophile when you actually show up." So that's who he's working for. He's not working for Schumer. He's working for a pedophile. All right. And then the last one here is from Pat. And Pat writes, could have stopped at "I don't work" in his comment. So I don't work for, but yes, could have stopped at just "I don't work." All right, that's a little bit from 2 of the individuals in Congress that represent Wisconsin. Now let's go to somebody who did represent Wisconsin at one time, now represents the Department of Transportation. That's Sean Duffy. Sean Duffy's in the news. Yep. This is interesting stuff because it has to do with billionaires right here in our state and across the border and, the flatlands. The Atlantic just untangled a financial web that exposes a bribery scandal hidden in plain sight. Trump's Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, got caught funneling $1 million to a PAC for his son-in-law's congressional run. Okay. Now, at the same time, Duffy rolled out a pilot program expanding truckers' working hours, overtime hours. And this is pushed by billionaire Richard Uihlein and Liz. Now, weeks later, after he donated the $1 million into his son-in-law's PAC,
Richard Uihlein matched it with another $1 million. And that PAC then spent heavily promoting the candidacy of this 26-year-old candidate. His name is Michael Alfonso. He's running for the House of Representatives. And it didn't stop there either. Duffy appeared as a special guest at events backed by transportation lobbyists. Nothing wrong with that. Ethics officials warned it just gets too dang close to circumstantial evidence of a quid pro quo. Think so? I don't know. They always get away with everything, don't they? The MAGAs. Remember, at one time they said, well, this investigating the outgoing administration is really a waste of time. We should move on. I don't think the Democrats are going to do that this time. They better damn well not do that. All right. Now we're going to get into something here. And as I said, there's a kind of a potpourri of stuff today. So let's get into the Pam Bondi thing. And this is kind of funny. It's just it's an interesting picture. And if you have a chance to watch the video, if you're watching the video, you're probably not, but it's a wastebasket. And it has a picture in it. So I want to play this for you as, there we go. Here we go. Are you all set? Let's go with Pam Bondi. This is from MS Now, reporting that Pam Bondi's portrait was thrown in a trash can in the Department of Justice. Okay, listen.
And if you want a sense of just how quickly things are moving at the DOJ, MS Now has new reporting that Bondi's portrait has already been taken down. And you see it there, thrown in the garbage. Joining me now, MS Now Justice and
There you go. Oh, that looks so good. I understand in all of these other departments across the country, similar pictures. People are comparing them now, you know. This is what we'll be doing at Easter, at our Easter get-togethers. Now, who else but Ted Nugent had to get back in the news again, saying some outrageous, crazy stuff. I want to dispute kind of what he says here, because there's this assumption that people know about how things function. You know, they know their way around the kitchen. They know how to shop for stuff. They are aware that they could be ripped off at any time through fast-talking salesmen, whatever. You know, these are things we learn in life. But for Ted Nugent, you know, people should know this instinctively. So let's listen to what Ted has to say.
These kids are so soft. They are so spoiled. They have no idea why they turn on the hot water faucet, why hot water comes out. They have no idea why they can plug stuff in the wall and electricity turns it on. These kids need to be stripped naked and thrown into the wilderness without anything for a week. And if they don't make it, tough. They need to learn what my kids and my grandkids, my bandmates, I got a bunch of rock and roll bandmates that are tougher than any of these Gen Zers. Now, let me clarify that. Only the guilty need to feel guilty.
Yeah. Okay. He doesn't clarify. Here's the thing. You kind of learn through life these little things. You know, I was never a home handyman, but I certainly picked up a few things as it went along. I watched the plumbers, how they did it. I watched the electricians, how they did it. I watched the cement guy pour the cement for a project we had here at the home. Now, I could pour cement, but I'm not going to do that because it seems like a really heavy job. But anyway, you learn through watching these individuals, these professionals come into your home. You know what you should tackle and what you should call a professional into your home to fix. These are things, these are life experiences. He doesn't like that. He wants to throw people out into the wilderness, as he says. Well, okay. That may be a little drastic, but, you know, I never liked sleeping in a tent. So there's a little secret. Let's go to data centers. We have been talking about data centers a lot here in the program, but and pointing out some of the problems. Now, these data centers have been negotiating with local communities. In some communities, they've been keeping these negotiations secret. And in some, they've been very clear about what their intentions are and what the community can expect from them. But here's the problem. Once those data centers go in, that's it. And whatever crops up as a problem, maybe a problem they said would never happen, you're stuck with it. You're stuck with it forever, okay? Now we've heard about sulfur being a smell that people don't appreciate, and that's at Colossus in Texas, Elon Musk's data center. People have to put up with sulfur, okay? Now, and that's a big problem because, like I said, Satan shows up. When you do smell sulfur, Satan is not far behind. And then others are warming the area around their data centers by 16 degrees. We talked about that story. And some are pretty noisy. We're going to get to a story here about a noisy data center, and this is a story out of Michigan, southwest Michigan. So let's check this out. That's the sound of a data center.
In the summertime, like I said, we like to have our windows open, and it's hard to when you're listening to that all the time. Yeah, I worry about that, the property value, because who's going to want to, if we want to resell the house, who's going to want to buy the house with that noise? No one's going to want to buy it. They'll be like, no, we ain't moving there. I mean, and we liked it here. We've been here since 09, and we loved it here. But now, I don't know. It's not the quiet country city living that we've been used to.
Yeah, that's not quite as quiet as you like it. Wow. That is pretty dramatic. Okay. Another data center problem. We keep covering them here, and it just keeps coming and coming. All of these problems, once the data center is up and running, it happens. We're finding out that they had nothing but empty promises to the local communities and the politicians in those local communities. They lied, in other words. Let's get to Donald Trump's signature on money. All right. Normally, it's the Treasury Secretary's signature on there. But in this case, they're going to make an exception. Trump's signature will go on bills in celebration of the country's 250th anniversary. Paper currency typically features just the Treasury Secretary's signature since it was first printed back in 1861. So we've got to break that tradition. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said this: the president's mark on history. Wow. Okay. As the architect of America's golden age, economic revival is undeniable. It hasn't happened. It's also well-deserved, he said. So having his signature on the bill, sharing it, Bessent, Treasury Secretary, and, of course, Trump's signature will also be on the bill. The first $100 bills are scheduled to be produced in June with a 24-karat commemorative gold coin featuring Trump's image. Now, like I said, the golden age hasn't happened. It's presumptive, but we'll have the money out there celebrating it. And if it doesn't happen, at least he can say, look, they honored me. Here, I'm on the $100 bill, which is something I'll probably never get to see either. So, all right, let's get to, and I got to say, I love the post from HQ News Now that simply states this: Trump gets distracted. All right, so that's the lead in here. Trump gets distracted. Let me just cue it up as I produce my own show on the fly. Here we go. This is Trump getting distracted.
And the other thing, this was not part of what I wanted to do, but we've done it, I guess, through sheer force of personality. We have a regime change like nobody thought was possible. They said, what do you mean you have regime change? My friend, great show. I love this guy. He's so nice to me. Yeah. Every time I watch, and I appreciate. We're not supposed to be seduced that way, right?
No.
But I am. When somebody's nice to me, I love that person. Even if they're bad people, I couldn't care less. I'll fight to the end for them. So I appreciate it. But,
well, I'm sure that Pam Bondi feels pretty much the same way about his loyalty to her. Seduction. This is Representative Jeff Van Drew. He's a Republican out of New Jersey. And he had something really important to say. I think all of us can certainly identify with this. He says Americans are struggling with rising prices. But his advice is typical, very typical. We've heard Bessent and we've heard others from the administration. In fact, I think it was Dr. Oz who was saying that we should work early while we're still in high school, and we should work late in life after retirement. Okay, so here's another Republican telling us what he thinks about, well, jobs and being able to afford a normal everyday life.
The list goes on of all the things. Our gas tax automatically increases in New Jersey. And by the way, so do our tolls and our fees automatically increase. All of that. Now we're going to have on top of that, and I'm talking to my folks in New Jersey, my state, you better just keep breaking your back and working hard, maybe get yet another job.
All right, there you go. Maybe just get another job. And if you have 2 or 3 already, well, okay, we'll add more to that. This is, I guess, the way they see society. Just stay busy. All right. We'll spend the money on what we want to spend it on, like $200 billion on a war of choice. But you're not going to get any benefits. Trump just came out and said he doesn't want to pay for Medicare or Medicaid or child care centers. He doesn't want to do any of that stuff. He can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can afford the war, spending money on it, but we can't afford the American public, the people that actually hire these politicians to do the work for them. So this guy is telling us, well, get another job. Add it to the list. All right. Now everybody knows that because Pam Bondi is out, Todd Blanche is in. He's the acting attorney general. I think he's, very matter of fact, very specific. This comment that I'm about to play from Todd Blanche. The thing is, they refer to these victims as women. These aren't women. These are children. So let's play what Todd Blanche says. I think he's going to get a lot of blowback on this. I think he's going to change his mind, be forced to change his mind, just as Pam Bondi did. And we'll see what happens. But here's his comment.
Thank you. You said this is the end of the Epstein, of your review of the Epstein files. So just to clarify, is the public going to learn the identities of the men who abused the girls with the information that you're releasing? And if not, why not? And then I have a quick follow-up.
I mean, you just baked in an assumption into your question that I have never said and I don't know to be true. Is the public going to learn about men that abuse these girls? Like, what does that mean? I don't understand what that means.
Wow.
Well, I mean,
it's easy to...
They're the men who abused the young women through Epstein's...
Look, we said in July, and it remains as true today as it was in July. If we had information, we meaning the Department of Justice, about men who abused women, we would prosecute them, right? We talked about the work that we're doing. That's why I said that.
But you haven't.
I said this earlier. There's this built-in assumption that somehow there's this hidden tranche of information of men that we know about that we're covering up or that we're choosing not to prosecute. That is not the case. I don't know whether there are men out there that abuse these women.
Girls, yes. All right. They're not going to prosecute. This is the official word from this administration. All right. Now, this is kind of interesting, pulling out of NATO. We all know that Trump had his sights on pulling out of NATO. He didn't want to be a part of it. That was during the first administration. Really ripped into it. Doesn't understand NATO. I don't think anybody has described the purpose of NATO. But the purpose of NATO, of course, is a defensive thing. They will be there. They'll have other countries' backs if there is some war going on. Someone is attacked. But turn that around. What happens when one of the NATO members goes to war? Are they expected to join them in a war of choice? Probably not. I don't think that's why NATO was formed in the first place. There was no aggression. There was no one attacking other people. It's just the way it is. And the coverage for this, by the way, is from the BBC. So it's a little longer, but it really does have a lot of good things and a lot of good points to make.
Donald Trump says he's strongly considering pulling the U.S. out of the NATO alliance, unhappy with the reluctance of some members to join offensive operations in the war with Iran. With the latest, here's Paul Adams.
Iran is still firing back. These drones aimed, it says, at American bases in the Middle East. Donald Trump says Iran wants a ceasefire. That's not yet how it looks. The US and Israel continue to bomb. The president says it could all be over in 2 or 3 weeks. But how to remove Iran's stranglehold over the Strait of Hormuz, the reluctance of Washington's NATO allies to get involved while the war still rages, a source of mounting frustration. Not for the first time, the president says he's had enough. NATO, he told The Telegraph, is a paper tiger. Pulling America out is beyond reconsideration.
Unfortunately, we are going to have to re-examine whether or not this alliance that has served this country well for a while is still serving that purpose, or is it now become a one-way street where America is simply in a position to defend Europe, but when we need the help of our allies, they're going to deny us basing rights and they're going to deny us overflight?
Yes. Yeah. Britain has allowed American bombers to use RAF Fairford for what are described as purely defensive operations. The Prime Minister determined to resist America's demands for more.
Whatever the pressure on me and others, whatever the noise, I'm going to act in the British national interest in all the decisions that I make. And that's why I've been absolutely clear that this is not our war, or we're not going to get dragged into it.
And tell everyone else. Now, on the address tonight, we're hearing that the Iranians have issued an open letter to the American people saying it's time for engagement, not conflict. The president is going to give an important update on Epic Fury. And the White House has released a kind of whole list of times in which they say the aims of the war have been unchanging, unwavering, completely consistent, sensitive, of course, to the idea that the objectives have been changing. None of those objectives include things like rescuing the enriched uranium, which is buried under all that rubble. The president says now he doesn't care about that.
Just amazing. Point blank. Boy, the BBC and those in Britain certainly know how to describe what's going on in this country. I want to leave with this last story here. Another Trump lie. And this is about the Sharpie CEO who denied ever having a conversation with Trump. Now, what do you do, right? This guy makes this stuff up. Conversations he'd have with people that he never had with people. Why he brings it up, I don't know. Maybe it seems like he knows a lot of important folk. That's why he's bringing it up. Oh, I know the CEO here. I know the CEO there. But certainly the CEO of Sharpie, because he has been so, I guess, enamored with Sharpie pens that he had to tell this particular story. And I think that this is MS Now, I believe. Yeah, it is. And their report on it here.
Is the company that makes Sharpies told the Washington Post the conversation the president said he had with the head of Sharpie about those pens never happened, which means if true, he made it up and interrupted a cabinet meeting to tell a story he fabricated or hallucinated about his favorite pen. Again, this is not the first time he's been caught making stuff up. Here he is talking about Maryland Governor Wes Moore last summer.
I met him at the Army-Navy game. They said, "Oh, there's Governor Moore. He'd love to see you." He came over to me, he hugged me, shook my hand. "You were there." He said, "Sir, you're the greatest president of my lifetime."
Oh, my God.
Okay, so Wes Moore quickly came out and said that conversation was imaginary. It never happened. The month before that, the White House struggled to defend a story the president told about his uncle, John Trump. He had claimed taught Ted Kaczynski, a.k.a. the Unabomber, at MIT, except John Trump died more than a decade before Kaczynski was identified. and Kaczynski never attended MIT. He's told that story multiple times in the past. I could go on, and, I will for a moment longer. There's the yarn he told about a former president recently telling him they wish they had Trump's courage to go into Iran. They have all denied it, all the living presidents. There's the one where he claimed Tucker Carlson reached out to profusely apologize amid a MAGA split over U.S. involvement in Israel's strikes on Iran, which Carlson has flat out denied. There are also the countless stories about his friends, friends who are getting cheaper, quote, fat shots overseas, or the friends who claim they've seen illegal voting, or the boat company owners who complain about electric engines and then praise him for being smart enough to ask about electrocution and whether it's better to be electrocuted by a boat battery or eaten by a shark in the ocean.
I love that story.
While a lot of this has always just been part of who Donald Trump is, a man who works the room, seeks attention, seeks applause, he's now about to be 80 years old, and he's launched a war that he does not seem to have a plan for.
There you go. Wow. Thanks for that list. That was very complete. Well, that will just about do it. I do want to mention this. Gordy and I had gotten together yesterday, and we recorded a little piece. But unfortunately, we had some difficulty on one of the mics, and it didn't turn out well. So we would have debuted John and Gordy back together again today. But sadly, a microphone got in the way. Well, that technology. So anyway, we'll be back again with another big report over the weekend. Take care of a lot of things that happened over the weekend. And hopefully, Gordy will be joining us as well. So I'm John Peterson. This is Media World Extra, and we'll be back again. Thanks a lot.